Tonight, Batgirl comes to the rare conclusion that maybe there are some problems that can't be punched. Superboy very nearly learns about the birds and the bees, and Grifter has a new superpower, the ability to pull other superpowers out of his ass. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 41 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and quick question, can it technically be called news if it happened 10 years ago? Because I keep on looking up things that happened 10 years ago and trying to bring them up here in the opening, but I don't know if I can call it news because it's 10 years old. Regardless, I'm going to because I have no better word for it, but just making you aware. But before I get into the news of what happened 10 years ago, let me tell you the comics that came out 10 years ago today. This week, June 13th, 2012, DC had 14 comics, including the number 10 issues of Batman, Batman and Robin, Batgirl, Superboy, Green Lantern, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, Frankenstein, and Resurrection Man. Additionally, we had the number 2 issue of The Ravagers and the number 9 issue of the miniseries The S.H.A.D.E. Now, onto that news. I forgot to mention last week that DC was very much praised in a lot of ways by making the Green Lantern of Earth 2 come out as gay. I didn't realize that was the first time that that character was gay. It has been something that has stuck around in comics ever since, and considering we are in Pride Month, good on you, DC. You got a lot of praise for that. To completely undo all goodwill, DC this week, 10 years ago, announced that Superman writing duties would be taken over by Scott Lobdell. As if Superman was not already hard enough to read for me. Dear Lord. All right. So now you know. That's the news, if you want to call it that. I'll work on that. I'll workshop it. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's get into the comics for this week, starting with almost the conclusion of the Court of Owls story in Batman. Batman number 10, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. Last issue we left off with Lincoln March dying at the hands of a Talon, and Batman getting one last lead off of him in his dying breath. And this issue shows that it led to a older, very rich couple named Joseph and Maria Powers. And Batman, he knew that they were part of the Court of Owls. Like, as soon as he figured out they were the rich and powerful people, he's like, yeah, that they have to be one of them. But, he didn't know that it was the right place to go yet. But anyway, we open up inside the Powers building, and it's completely tossed and just everything's destroyed and flipped as Maria gets up to her penthouse suite. And then Batman just shows up in front of her and is just like, hey, I found this mask. And Maria's like, that's not my husband's. And she's like, yeah, I know, it's yours. Your husband's mask is not in its case. Where is he? And she's like, I'm never going to tell you. You should just go, Batman. Security's going to be here in no time. And he's like, I'm going to hunt him down and find him. And you're next. And so then he just leaves her to be. And his whole plan was to scare her enough in order to get her to call her husband, which she then does, and then they start putting a trace on the phone. However, they realize that they can't actually trace where the phone is. They can tell where the call is being made to in general, but there's a black spot over the area. And Alfred's trying to narrow it down, but then Batman's like, hold on, is it in this general part of the city near the coast? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? And he's like, son of a bitch. And so Batman then recounts in his early days, when he was first investigating the Court of Owls, when he was really young, that house that he got trapped in, and he's like, it was here. I was right. The Court of Owls was here. And he goes through this whole thing of there's a feeling that you get. It's not quite like the aha, eureka, I've cracked the case thing, but when you solve the case, it's a remembering, where all of a sudden something that you forgot from way earlier on is like, oh, of course, that thing, now everything makes sense. And so he busts his way into this building, and he's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take out the Court of Owls. This is it. I'm going to get them all. And he walks up into their room where they're having a meeting, and they're all dead. Every single one of them has been poisoned. And he's just son of a bitch. So cut to either the next morning or sometime later, and he's just sitting there looking out a window, and Alfred's come up and he's like, hey, you doing all right? You got a meeting soon? And he's like, yeah. So here's the thing. It doesn't make sense. Why would they take their own lives? Why would they all just drink poison wine? Like, yeah, I was going to catch up with them, but they're all rich and powerful. Like, they could have done something about it. Or at least they would have thought they'd be able to do something about it. And he's like, Alfred's like, well, maybe it just doesn't feel right because these things don't usually wrap up this nice. But you saw them. They're dead. Like, it's not a thing. And he's like, all right. So what's the meeting I got to go to? And as he gets up and he turns around, he looks at this portrait of his parents, particularly his mother. And he just takes a second. He's like, son of a bitch. And then he runs out. And he apparently forgot one last little thing. And he heads down to the morgue and opens up one of the drawers there, and inside is a note saying, follow me down the rabbit hole. And as such, he then makes his way over to the Willowwood Home for Children, which I guess was like an orphanage / children's hospital. And it was completely like, it's in shambles, it's terrible, the orderlies were not keeping good track of the children or anything like that. It's a mess, but it's all just completely abandoned now. And Batman shows up and he says that he's here, to which he's immediately captured in that. And then we see Lincoln March is there. However, Batman says, like, you're not there. There is no Lincoln March. Lincoln March is just a paper man created by the Court of Owls. Something. And then we just get the layout of everything that happened. So, in order here, Lincoln's the one who killed all the people of the Court of Owls. He was a member with them. He was taken from this children's home and made into a public figure that would become mayor of Gotham because they needed just a puppet to control and whatnot. But then back during the issue where Bruce Wayne was nearly killed by a Talon and Lincoln was also attacked, the Court of Owls was like, oh, that was totally a mistake. The Talon just messed up. But that was the point where Lincoln was like, nah, I get in the vibe you're trying to kill me. So he went out and killed all of them first. And then he put his own name on the hit list so that suspicion would be thrown off of him of being a member. Also, he took the Talon serum in order to bring himself back to life after he was killed. So he is technically dead, but either way, he's talking to Bruce this whole time as Bruce is explaining all this, and he's just slowly walking him through this. And he starts putting on this armor because he explains that they were going to make a new Talon before they realized they could bring him back from the dead. They were going to make a new Talon in order to fight Batman, who was at that point up and coming. But then, they didn't. Anyway, then it comes to the reveal that Lincoln already laid out a little bit of his reveal of who he actually is, quote unquote, which Bruce doesn't believe, but Lincoln wholeheartedly does. And apparently he believes that he is a missing member of the Wayne family. He was a long-lost son of Thomas and Martha Wayne. And the reason that Bruce came to that conclusion is because a story that they told way back in issue 3 or whatever of Martha, or of a little clay pin that Lincoln's mom wore. And we saw it in the portrait of Martha and Thomas Wayne. Batman says this is all BS. He's like, nope, totally is true. I'm your long-lost brother. Come on, don't you remember? I was born early and I had problems, so they put me in this children's hospital. And he's like, no, that's stupid. You're not my brother. I don't have a brother. And he's like, all right, well, regardless, I'm going to be the Wayne that this city truly deserves, and we're going to finish this out right now. And he finishes putting on his armor, and he's Owlman. He's just all based off of owls. And Batman gets out of the net, and they're ready to fight. And that's where the issue wraps up. So it was a good issue. It was a solid reveal. The issue that I have with it is that there's no way you could have known. It's not a thing where it's like Sixth Sense where you look back throughout the movie and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. It's a thing of just the sudden twist of, oh, and by the way, there's a bomb across town that I set before I even got here. It's like, I couldn't have possibly known that before there was no way to even get that hint. I don't think it detracts that much from the reveal. I think it's still an interesting enough reveal. And, moving forward, whether or not he is actually a long lost Wayne sibling will be an interesting reveal. But I don't know. It's a solid issue, but it feels like they were setting it up as oh yes, because there was that thing of the remembering. They set it up in the narration as you should have been able to remember that this was a thing. And while you could remember that the little heart-shaped pin thing was a thing, you never saw the portrait of his mother. So it was like you never were able to put two and two together. So yeah, it's fine. It's a good enough story. I'm going to go ahead and give it I'll give it a 7.5. It's still very good. My complaints are completely surface level. It's still solid throughout, but it is mostly just a reveal issue. Not a whole lot like major happens. I think honestly I got a bigger thing out of the entire Court of Owls reveal, like all of them being dead. That was far more impactful than the reveal of, oh, he's actually a sibling, I guess. So 7.5. Still looking forward to seeing. It says it concludes next issue, so we'll see how that goes. Batman and Robin number 10, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. Last issue was a tie-in to Night of the Owls, so this is pretty much separate entirely. And this issue picks up with 4 people who were all hurt by Batman in some way or another. They were all criminals, and then Batman got a little bit too vengeance-y with them. Just one guy I want to point out on this page is literally just a dude who has a batarang like through his temples, and he is not okay. Also a dude with a permanent boot mark on his face. So yeah, anyway, they're interesting. They're all being met up at a meeting here of a dude named Terminus who's got some sort of illness going on with him. And he's like, here's the deal. You've all been hurt by Batman. So have I. You've all been running errands for me without your knowing. And now I finally have everything I need for us all to take revenge on Batman. And they're like, okay, what do you want to do? He's like, I'm going to kill Batman before I die. And that's basically where it leaves off for there. Then we get, at the Wayne Manor, we get Alfred, Bruce, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, and Damian all posing for a portrait. And Bruce is just making constant suggestions of like how to make it better or whatnot. And Tim is just constantly like throwing punches at Damian, verbally obviously, just saying how he's like... Damian makes some offhanded comment about a 17th century painter, and Tim goes, thanks for reminding me what an arrogant idiot you are, Damian. And I'm like, dude, too much. Regardless, they're all still posing for the portrait, and they're still making snide remarks at each other, to which Tim mentions something that happened in Batman Incorporated before the New 52, where he killed a guy. I didn't read it, so regardless. Bruce tells the painter to take a break while he just tells his kid, knock it off. And basically, he tells him, look, you all were Robins. That's something that should bring you together, not try to, like, have you guys prove which of you is the best Robin. That's not what this is for. You need to be, brothers or whatever. And he's like, yeah, okay, great. And Damian and Tim storm off. And Bruce is like, I don't know. I wanted us to be able to come together, not with the capes and cowls on, and, like, do something in order to celebrate our time together. I don't know, whatever. So then we cut back to Terminus, who I guess is, like, setting up his big thing to attack Batman, and then his body starts decaying, and we see he only has like 30 hours left, or maybe it stays. They don't really put a marker on which is which, but regardless, he hops in this huge like needle machine that pokes him like all over his body in order to give him some sort of infusion to help him stay alive for a little longer. So then we cut to a rooftop where Red Hood, Nightwing, and Tim Drake, Red Robin, have all met up, and they don't know who's called this meeting. Somebody's gotten them all together. They're not exactly happy that they're here at all. But then Damian shows up, and he's like, I'm the one who called you guys here. And Tim's like, dude, in the book Batman Incorporated, you have a whole bunch of assassins coming after you for like $500 million. Why are you out right now? And he's like, oh, you mean these assassins? And he just shows some strung up. And Damian just lays down the law to all these guys of like, here's the deal. I know I'm the best Robin. And in the coming days, I am going to be attacking each of you and beating you at something that you consider yourselves to be the best at. As such, I will humiliate you and take my claim as the best Robin. And the other three are like, what in the hell are you talking about, kid? And he's like, I'm warning you so that way you can't say I surprised you. Goodbye. And he just goes off. And honestly, I feel like the playing off here between how everyone's just making fun of Jason the whole time is just fantastic. So then we cut down to Bruce and Alfred down in the Batcave, who are just making some batarangs. And basically, Bruce is playing like protective parent of not letting anyone know that Damian killed another guy after the guy that Tim mentioned. So Alfred's like, are you sure that's best to keep things from them? And he's like, I'm just doing what's best for my son. I promised him I wouldn't tell nobody. And then the bat signal goes off. So then later on, Tim Drake arrives in the Batcave, and he goes to talk to Batman in the chair, but of course Damian's sitting there, and he just... Tim's like, oh, you want to fight now? That's it? This is how it is? He's like, no, I'm going to use logic and reasoning with you, Tim, because that's what you're best at. And so he just walks through how Tim has constantly been on him about being like a murderer. And then he shows footage from the culling, which I'm not going to recap, but regardless, Tim very nearly killed a guy. He didn't, but he very nearly did. And they get into a little fight, but it's still mostly verbal, where basically Damian's telling him, like, hey, just admit that you had murderous intent and that it's, like, that you're not better than me in that because you still had it. And he's like, fine, I wanted to kill the guy, but I didn't. Is that what you wanted to hear? And he's like, yeah, exactly. Because now you understand that you need to accept me as a Wayne and a Robin. And Tim just puts back on his helmet and he's like, screw this. And he leaves. So then we cut back to Terminus. He's getting out of his little needle bath thing. And as he steps out, he puts his hand on the wall and it starts like glowing. So I guess he has some sort of energy power or something. But when he steps out, he is fully buff now. He's not old anymore. And he's like, this will finally give me the time I need to lay waste to a man and his city. And we see that for somehow, some way, he's gotten in possession of a giant nuclear warhead. And I guess that's the plan, is just launch a nuke. It was good. It was fine. I do want to say art-wise, it's a little bit shaky on some of the faces. And I feel like I made this point about Gleason before, where when it's just people's faces, I feel like sometimes it goes way too, maybe it's the inker even, but whoever's in charge of it goes way too heavy on the blacks on the face. It just makes it feel like every scene is just this gothic horror. But regardless, it's fine in most general sense. Writing-wise, I enjoyed it. Sets up two separate plots that hopefully are going to crisscross in at least a little bit of a way. But I very much enjoy the idea of the Robin plot, where he's just going to go out and prove that he's better. So, yeah, no, it's solid throughout. I'll give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's very good. The only thing that's keeping it down for me is the fact that the Terminus thing, especially the first page reveal of all the like Z-list villains, like they're just thugs off the street that just happen to have physical deformities now. I don't know. It's not the strongest page to open with. It's an interesting looking page, but it's like this is our threat. A dude who has a boot mark permanently in his face. Great. Batgirl number 10, written by Gail Simone, art by Alitha Martinez. Last issue was a tie-in to Night of the Owl, so it has nothing to do with that. This issue picks up with Batgirl beating up a bunch of car thieves, and the fight's whatever, but I do like her narration throughout, which is basically her saying, like, you know, like, sometimes I wonder if I'm doing more harm than good, because I'm literally hospitalizing these guys when maybe they just need, like, some job security or like social service or whatever. Basically, I feel like I'm a little bit weird being a private security force for rich people, because they're just a bunch of rich people at this gala and they're just stealing these people's cars. However, and she makes the point that the car thieves have apparently, like, some other carjackers have recently taken hostages, and therefore she's not taking any bets here on whether or not she can let these guys go. So an interesting point of whether or not she's doing the right thing, beating the crap out of people with just no jurisdiction whatsoever. So anyway, one of the guys she's beating up starts getting away. He runs his way out of a door out of this parking garage, and she gives chase, but before she can get there, she hears this guy just let out this unearthly scream, and when she opens the door, his leg is stuck in a bear trap, and it is like broken in 100 places. And so she calls up an ambulance, and she's like, yeah, there's a badly wounded guy here, send an ambulance. And she just tries to talk to him, and she's like, yeah, I can't take it off. It may be the only thing stopping you from bleeding out right now, but I'm going to stay here. I'm with you. And I forget he gets the name of him, Ricky. And she's like, I'm going to stay with you, Ricky. And then these 3 people show up all in like gowns and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, don't worry. We're security at this event. We called the police as well. They'll be arriving, but we'll take care of them. And she's like, did you set this bear trap if you're security? And they're like, no, this must have been like a rival gang thing where they saw they were hitting them and then set the bear trap outside. And she's like, rival gangs don't do that. Or do they? I'm not sure. So anyway, she manages to get a little bit bullied out of this situation because they're like, you're also like, you're a vigilante here and we appreciate what you did, but like, police are coming, so maybe you might want to leave. And she's like, okay, Ricky, you're going to be okay, bye. And she leaves. And she feels bad about leaving Ricky, but, it happens. So then we cut to what this gala event all the rich people were here for. And it's a woman named Charisse Carnes, whose family was murdered in front of her. And she is using like their inheritance and stuff like that she got from them to take this low-income neighborhood and turn it into something better. To which Lois Lane, who is there at the event covering it, basically says like, all you're doing is just gentrifying this area. Like you're kicking out all the low-income housing and stuff like that, and you are making it this horrible, like this basically business park more or less. And she doesn't say that to the face immediately, but once the interview ends, she goes up to her and she's like, hey, so what do you have to say to your critics who say this is nothing but a scheme so that people stop thinking of you as the woman who killed her family? And Lois does not let up on the fact that, it was just, she said that there were people who killed her family, but they never did find whoever was responsible. And that she's just doing this to try to separate her name from that grisly past. And Charisse then separates herself from the interview, has her security put in between the pair of them, and she just talks about the event. She's like, I was 16, I had to sit on a floor in my parents' blood, my brother's blood, it was awful. And then, like, her security's tearing up for her. She's like, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. The media called you horrible things. And she's like, I know, I just need a moment alone. And she steps behind this curtain, and there's a man in a cage with his eyes sewn shut. And he's like, please let me go, Charisse. And he's like, oh, I'm never going to let you go. Please, you think I'm that good? So, yeah, she's clearly crazy. Meanwhile, Barbara gets back home, and she's still feeling a little bit messed up over having left that guy, but, not a lot she could have done. But when she gets home, she realizes she hasn't seen her roommate at home in like 2 days. And when she gets back, she gets a call from the roommate, who apparently got arrested at an Occupy Gotham protest. So we're really dealing with the class warfare thing going on here. So Barbara bails her out, and they go down to a cafe and get some food. And basically, the roommate, I forget her name, Alizia, whatever her name was, she basically starts railing into like the gentrification stuff and how Bruce Wayne is doing the exact same thing in Batman of the Gotham Revitalization Project, where they're just taking all these people in low-income areas and just telling them, piss off, find somewhere else to live. And it works out for the rich and the elite, but it doesn't work out for the poorer class. Barbara tries to stick up for him briefly, but of course she can't reveal much. So then we go to the following night, where Barbara's just going through the town, just doing her thing, and she wants to go back and find out what happened with Ricky. And I don't know if like it's at the same place where it happened, but she just happens to stumble across Ricky, who is being held hostage by what is clearly the security people. I don't even know if they're trying to hide that, but they're wearing domino masks, so maybe. So anyway, they're dangling Ricky off the building, and they're just like, hey, Batgirl, as you can see, we amputated his leg, punishment fitting the crime or something like that. Anyway, we want you to join our group. We are the Disgraced, and we want you to join our group, and we're going to take care of these hoodlums and these hooligans. But yeah, join us or else he dies. And she's like, okay, so if I join you, you'll let him live? And he's like, well, not exactly. There is a test you got to pass. And she throws him off the building. Batgirl dives after Ricky. And she's like, well, you failed. Oh, well. So Batgirl tries to save him. And then this woman with giant, like, angel wings so like Hawkwoman, but not Hawkwoman. She kicks Batgirl and Ricky into a window. Ricky just excuses himself, just leaves the fight entirely. Batgirl starts fighting with Discount Hawkman, as she quite literally says, bargain bin Hawkman, and she ties like a grapple line around so she can't fly away, and then just nails like a shoryuken right in her face. But then apparently her name was Catharsis. But anyway, the rest of the Disgraced all show up, and they're like, "Oh, you don't understand, Batgirl. You should have joined us because of us, Gotham crime is no more. Behold our leader, Nightfall." And it's in shadow, and they're just standing behind it. But apparently, Nightfall is the name of the thing. Whatever. It's kind of a crappy. I really like the ideas it's laying down in terms of like the class stuff. I really like that. Art fantastic, but then you just throw it out of like, oh, we are a vigilante group fighting hoodlums and whatnot. And I'm like, I get it, but like they're so lame looking, and only one of them, as far as I can tell, has powers. Maybe the rest of them do, but it's not a good step forward for this particular group. They might turn it around next issue, but for just this first issue, they seem kind of dumb. Overall, though, I'm going to give it a 7. I do like what it has to say. If it keeps leaning into this class stuff, I'm all for it, because there's not really a book right now that's really doing that well. So very much looking forward to that. And like I said, art was okay throughout. It wasn't the best, but it fits into the same style that the rest of the book has been. So 7 overall. Superboy number 10, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Sebastian Fiurama. This is immediately following up after the ends of The Culling, where Teen Titans have made their way out into wherever, and Superboy and Wonder Girl have ended up together, and we see Wonder Girl waking up on Superboy's chest, like they all look all cuddled up, to which they both freak out. Wonder Girl's yelling at Superboy. Superboy's like, how is that possibly my fault? I just woke up too. So they take a look around real quick and realize their team is not anywhere to be seen. Superboy and Wonder Girl both fly up, and they see that this island that they are on is literally in the shape of a giant question mark. And they're like, that's weird and very on the nose. So then they realize, okay, we gotta take some time, scope out, see if we can find the rest of our team. Let's go. So they fly over for quite some time, and Wonder Girl makes it clear that she is still very, very distrustful of everything about Superboy. And he's like, no, I get that. I understand. But I hope you can see me as better than that, considering I did totally save you guys during the culling. And she's like, shut up. So he's just reminiscing over, like, the past couple issues for the sake of the reader, I guess. And then all of a sudden Wonder Girl stops and she's like, all right, we've been searching for hours, which I don't get, but regardless, they land and Superboy decides, well, hold on, I can feel things through touching them, so let me just touch a tree that has deep roots on this island and I can feel out like the whole island based off that. And he does, and he says, nope, there's no one else around, it's literally empty. And she's like, okay, well, we need to keep doing something. And he's like, all right, well, I can bring you back to the mainland. We can go back to New York. Can you fly that far? And she's like, dude, you're willing to give up on your team that easily? Like, do you realize what we did before the culling to come and get you? And he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't fucking... But anyway, she's speechless all of a sudden because, wouldn't you know it, Superboy gets eaten by a T-Rex. It just happens. And then Wonder Girl's like, nah, if anyone's getting to eat him, it's me. She doesn't say that. I realize how bad that sounds now. Regardless, she punches the T-Rex in the stomach, and then he spits out Superboy, to which Wonder Girl then starts getting into trouble. Superboy flies back over, pries her out of the jaws, and then they both just KO punch this T-Rex in the face. And at that point, they're like, okay, something very weird is going on this island, but it's getting dark. We're not going to find them today, clearly. We need to set up camp and get something to eat. So go make yourself useful and start a fire. So then Wonder Girl goes, I guess, to go clean up, to which, of course, she's stripping in like a little lagoon, and Superboy walks up and she's like, excuse me, a little privacy. And he's like, sorry, I didn't know you were over here. And he sits down and he touches the ground using his telekinetic powers to like see her, quote unquote, to which he then gets a rock to the head. But then she's like, all right, whatever, you can... I'm not going to let you see nothing, so come on in. You need to take a bath as well. So they just
clean up there, and then we see them out by a fire later. Cassidy has gone out and gotten some food, and Superboy's like, I've never eaten before. I don't need to eat. Like, I'm Kryptonian, I guess, so I'm able to just store energy from the sun. And she's like, you've never dude, eat something. She shoves a piece of food in his face, and he is just all in on it. He just starts devouring all the food. So then they get to talking very briefly, and Superboy's like, hey, how come your costume, like, just appears? Are you, like, always wearing it? And she's like, yeah, no, it's always on me. And she's like, doesn't that get uncomfortable? And she's like, yeah, no, it's a curse. Thanks, Superboy. And so she flies up away from him. And he flies up to apologize. And, like, they have that moment where they're about to kiss. Like, they show the lips that far apart. And then all of a sudden, Superboy gets thrown down back towards the fire. And one girl's like, you really thought I would kiss you? You forget how you betrayed my entire team beforehand? He's like, right, sorry, Jesus. Hey, where'd that T-Rex go? And they follow the tracks of the T-Rex for a few minutes and discover a stairwell leading down into the island. Superboy goes first, and Wonder Girl's like, I don't care if you die, but please be careful. And inside he finds another door to which they both go through, and when they open it up, they come out to a, like, upside down version of the same island with the same T-Rex staring over them. To be continued in Teen Titans number 10. Okay. I mean, it's a good enough little character thing, just letting these two people who hate each other so thoroughly, like, get to know each other and learn a bit and, you know, grow closer. I can appreciate that. It's fine enough. By the way, this is where he officially takes on the name of Cornell, which I think he picked up when he met Supergirl. So no, it's fine. It's decent enough. My only issue with it is just I skipped over a lot of the, like, little gotcha comments, like the little things that it's like, oh, they're so snarky together. Like, yeah, no, they are. Please stop. Because while sometimes it works, all the time it's just annoying. So that's my only real critique on this. Overall, I would say it's a fine issue, and I really do like the art style that Sebastian Fiurama's bringing to it. It really does work, especially once it gets to, like, when they start being nicer to each other. It's just, I don't know, there's something to it. He does warm colors well. So yeah, it's okay. It's probably the best issue of Superboy I can honestly say I've read in, like, the nearly year I've done on this show. So I'm going to give it a 6.5. Maybe I've rated stuff higher than that, but 6.5 is where it feels like it's sitting about right now. And it has the potential to get better, but considering that next issue for this particular plot is going to be a whole team thing, I'm not really holding my breath. Green Lantern number 10, written by Geoff Johns, art by Doug Mahnke. We left off last issue with the Indigo Tribe power battery being destroyed, thus freeing the entire Indigo Tribe, which, as it turns out, are a bunch of murderers. So, a bunch of murderers are now chasing after Hal and Sinestro, except for Black Hand, who immediately just looks at his hand like, what happened to my black ring? And he throws off the Indigo ring and is just trying to bolt it off the planet somehow. So then we cut to Hal and Sinestro, who are running after Nostromo, the guy who made the Indigo Tribe battery, and Hal's just given the rundown to Sinestro of everything that's happened over the past few issues and what they're trying to do now. And Sinestro's like, dude, I could totally fight off the Indigo Tribe. Watch me. And he turns around and is about to use his power ring. And Hal just, like, puts a kitty leash on him, like a harness, and pulls him away. And he's like, you need my help here. It's the whole reason you pulled me off the planet and made me give up the life I wanted. And he's like, dude, you're a Green Lantern. This is your life. And he's like, shut up. We're not dealing with that right now. So Hal made a construct Humvee in order to transport them both. And he's about to run over Nostromo, so he just deactivates the Humvee. And Hal cages Nostromo. And Nostromo's like, just let me go. I want to say goodbye to my family before everything dies. And Hal's like, oh yeah, by the way, the Guardians are apparently going to destroy everything again, so that's something we got to deal with. But anyway, Sinestro just, because Nostromo's not willing to help rebuild the thing because Abin Sur is dead, Sinestro just comes up with a very sharp piece of wood, holds it to Nostromo's neck, and he's like, fix it or you die. And Hal's like, he was literally already resigned to death, Sinestro. Fear is not the answer right now. And Sinestro's like, fine, you're right. And he's like, I'm right. Did you say I'm right? Oh my God, can I write this moment down? So Sinestro says that he's going to go and take care of the Indigo Tribe while Hal does whatever he can in order to get Nostromo to do his thing. So Sinestro holds true to his word, starts beating the ever-loving crap out of the Indigo Tribe, and he does it with his bare hands, like he doesn't have a charge in his ring. And Nostromo's like, it's impossible without Abin-Sur, it's no hope. And he's like, yeah, no, I get it. Abin-Sur is impossible to live up to. Sinestro has told me many a times. But Abin-Sur is the one who gave me my ring, and I inherited all the responsibilities that he had. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do it now. So Nostromo's like, all right, well, you've given a motivational enough speech, I'll rebuild it. And so he tries to rebuild the battery, but it doesn't have the original spark. All the energy has been dispersed, and there's no original spark anymore, and he can't quite get it to hold together. And then Iroke, I believe her name is Iroke, a.k.a. the one Indigo Tribe member that everyone knows. She steps up, and of course she's a murderer now at this point. She steps up and she's like, hey, please fix it, because I do still, even without the ring, I do still feel bad about the thing I did, and I don't want to have to live with that. And as such, she feels sadness for her actions, compassion, and there's a slight spark in a ring, which is just enough for him to reforge the power battery. And all the killers who were still wearing their rings are immediately enslaved again to the compassion ring. And then we cut to the ring that Black Hand took off, which immediately is just like, hey, where's Black Hand? And it zooms off after him. Black Hand sees it coming. He's like, no. And so he jumps off of a cliff, and it just straight up head dives into the rocks beneath. And the ring's like, okay, gonna go find a replacement, and it zooms off elsewhere. So then Hal, he sees the Indigo Tribe, and he's like, hooray, we did it, everyone is back to... And then we see Sinestro there going, knock. He's like, okay, guys, I do need you to let Sinestro go, because I'm going to need him in order to take care of the whole Guardian subplot over there. And Iroke is like, we will let you have Sinestro on one condition. You have to tell us, you have to give your word that Sinestro is able to find redemption without our ring. And Hal's like, I want to believe that. And then we cut away. Like, we don't see how that resolves. So I'm hoping that's the truth. So anyway, we cut them one last time to Black Hand, who's still lying dead on the rocks. And then a black ring emerges from his mouth. And it says, William Hand of Earth, rise. And he puts it on, and he comes back as a Black Lantern zombie. And his first words as he stands up are, I want to go home. So, yeah. Revenge of Black Hand, picking up in the rest of this book, I suppose. It's the name of the trade. Had to happen. So, I like it. I don't know, there was just this air, it felt like pretty serious. Like, there were a lot of serious moments to it, but the entire air of the issue felt more humorous than anything else. Like, just Hal having to constantly deal with, like, no, shut up, we're not doing that. Like, I don't know, I enjoyed it. It just had this nice little tone to it in order to keep it not too terribly serious. If it wasn't intentional, then by all means it wasn't a great issue. But I'm choosing to believe it was. I'm going to give this one I'm going to give it an 8. I was about to say 7.5, but honestly, I think I like this issue well enough. I think it is a solid enough issue. It doesn't do a whole lot. It's just the cap off to the issue and then the setup for the next plot. But I think that the writing, and of course the art, but I think that the writing is high quality enough. Like, it rehashes things that need to be rehashed, and then it has, typical motivational speech, but then all the rest of the stuff is just high quality dialogue. And I really do appreciate that. It doesn't overstay its welcome at any point, and it even lets just the art tell the story in several panels. So I'm liking it. I definitely think it's worth an 8. We will see how the Black Hand story continues it, though. Deathstroke number 10, written and art by Rob Liefeld. This is the second part of the Lobo Hunt story, and we open with Lobo in a diner, just eating one of everything off the menu, because why not? Waitress comes up and he's like, I want more pistachio. And he's like, I'll get that. By the way, how are you planning on paying? And he's like, I'm going to let this diner live even after I destroy the rest of this pathetic planet. And then a biker dude shows up and he's like, hey, how about you keep it down over here? Some people are trying to eat. And he throws the biker into like a donut display, eats a couple of the donuts, steals the biker's bike, and makes his way out to wherever it is he's going. There's a narration on here that I don't know if it's diegetic or just the narrator, but it's just saying how much of a badass Lobo is. And then we get Deathstroke. He's just trying to lay out exactly what it is that he's doing, what he's trying to figure out, because apparently now he keeps a journal saying all the stuff in his head. And they went to basically the Supermax like prison facility thing that Lobo broke out of, and Zealot is like, hey, why are we here? Shouldn't we be looking for Lobo? And Deathstroke's like, I gotta research him in order to do my job. I know nothing about this guy. I gotta learn some weak points or something in here, so let's go. So Zealot, Deathstroke, and the Omegas jump down into the thing. It's a bloodbath in there, and Zealot's like, oh, this is a waste of our time. And then they're attacked by this big pink dude with some cybernetic parts, who is apparently a Kundian warrior named Clarke. I'm just going to go ahead and say this fight does nothing. Like, it is the rest of the issue. And the whole thing is that the Omegas and Zealot are all really trying to kill Clarke the Kund. Deathstroke wants to keep him alive for some information. And the Clarke is very upset that Lobo broke out of this place and just abandoned everyone else down there. The fact that no one is left alive, you would think, would mean Clarke could get out now, but apparently not. And I don't explain why. So anyway, Tigor jumps on him, tries to attack him. The other Primus tries to like telekinetically do some stuff or whatever it is he's doing. Deathstroke just keeps on jumping in their way, saying like, no, I need him alive. For God's sakes, let me get some info out of him. And then he goes after Callista, who, as a member of the royal family on her planet, Zealot is sworn to protect. And as soon as he goes after Callista, Zealot just plunges her sword through his chest. And then Deathstroke comes up and is just like, hey, buddy, I can still save your life, but you got to give me some info right now. And his little narration box is like, I can't save his life. He's going to die, but I need some info real bad, so I'm willing to lie about that. Which you think Deathstroke would just be willing to lie about that all the time. But regardless, the Kund guy's basically just like, psh, I ain't telling you nothing. Lobo's probably already reached the star point by now. He's activated the World Breaker, and he will end all life on Earth as you know it. Ack! Oh, sorry, just as he did on his own planet. Ack! And then he dies. And then Deathstroke's like, oh no, I'm dealing with a genocidal maniac. That ups the game a little bit. And then we cut to Colorado, where Lobo was making his way to, and apparently there was a crater that showed up quite some time ago, like it just is many years back, and they're like, nobody's allowed to investigate it, which everyone thinks is kind of weird that a big empty crater is not allowed to be investigated. But apparently it's not empty, because Lobo comes up, he presses a button, and he decloaks his ship, which is just there, and I guess they couldn't move it. But then Lobo's like, it's good to be home. And that's where we leave off. So here's the thing that annoyed me the most, is that way later in this show, we'll get to Tom King's Omega Men, which features these Omegas. And it's so interesting to see how in that series it's creative character designs and gives them each their own thing that like differentiates them as people. Whereas in this, they are all the exact same. They are Rob Liefeld looking people that act the same way as all other Rob Liefeld characters. And I'm frustrated so deeply, because Deathstroke, before this arc, was pretty good. It was stupidly fun. It had just big bombastic moments, and it had a good grasp on its characters. But now Deathstroke's like, I don't want to be the bad guy. And I don't like it. I just don't like it. And art's nothing to write home about either. So all in all, 4. It's a 4. And why do I even give it that much? Because it isn't, like, if you can get past the art, which some people can better than not, and you didn't know my characterization problems there, it's not the worst told story. It's doing something. It's, setting up this big threat that Deathstroke for some reason is a part of, but it's just not good. Grifter, number 10, written by Rob Liefeld and Frank Tieri, art by Scott Clarke. Last issue had Grifter joining a team because he's apparently now a chosen one, chosen to fight all of the Daemonites. This issue picks up with him and his team in some sort of truck convoy thing, making their way through some mountains, because staying in one place is too dangerous, and all the rest of his team is giving him a hard time of how he's so special. He's like the Queen of England. They all have to protect him. Why is he so special? He hasn't proven it yet. And, like, whatever. They literally go on for 3 pages about this, but it's all just, like, the exact same stuff. They call him names. They call him, like, Pretty Boy and stuff like that. Just know that happens. So anyway, the truck is targeted, and it explodes, because why not? Everyone freaks out. They're like, okay, well, guess that they were still able to find us somehow. And then we see that the main girl, and I genuinely don't even remember her name. I'm just going to call her main girl. Main girl and Grifter get out of the fight, and then they're just, hiding behind something else. Meanwhile, all the Daemonites are attacking the truck, which is still on fire. And we see one of the guys steps out, and he's like, we're sitting ducks in here. Luckily, this duck has a big-ass gun. It's an actual line. And he just starts shooting all the Daemonites he can. Meanwhile, he calls out to his teammates. He's like, hey, there's still guys pinned down in the truck in there. We got to get them out. Nobody else dies today. So Grifter and the main girl call out some cover fire, and the main guy runs back in. He gets a guy named Buck out of there. And Grifter shoots some Daemonites and whatever, and basically, at this point, the girl turns to Grifter and was just like, here's the deal. You need to show why you're so special and why we should be protecting you right now, because we are out of time, so do it. And then Grifter's just like, all right, let's find out what's going on. So he goes out into the field with his guns blazing, takes some shots, a Daemonite sneaking up behind him, and he telepathically, telekinetically, whatever you want to call it, floats his guns while he hits the Daemonite in the face. And then we see him pick up a whole bunch more guns, telekinetically, and fire them all at the Daemonites. Then he uses his telekinetic abilities to pick up the truck and all the Daemonites, hurl it into the air, then throw it onto the ground with massive force, killing almost all of them instantly. And then he pushes it off the cliff. So now Grifter's telekinetic. This was not hinted ever at any point, but he's just doing it secondhand now. Cool. So anyway, he does that. They make their way over to a safe house. They reveal that now we're going to be riding motorcycles when we leave tomorrow. So that's a thing. And then Grifter makes the point of like, okay, can we trust everybody here? Because somehow they managed to find us, despite the fact that we were like moving around to avoid them. And the one guy steps up and he's like, no, we can definitely trust everybody here. Those guys, the Daemonites are just deeply motivated to kill you. And he's like, all right, cool, that sounds great. So at least we're in a safe house. And then the safe house explodes. And standing outside the rubble is a Daemonite soldier named Singe. So, a lot of big events happening this issue. I'm okay with characters coming out with new powers. Like, fine, if you want to have somebody be able to like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Fine, cool, whatever. But Grifter literally treats this as if it's just the thing that he's been doing consistently since the beginning of the book, which, no, it is not. All he's had is the ability to be able to hear the thoughts of the Daemonites, and he shoot gun good. That's it. That's all he's had. But now he's like, no, now I can just, I wouldn't be surprised if they had that scene where like he takes apart a gun with just his mind, showing the mastery he has over the powers. Screw you. No. have him, like, he needs to be able to blunt force. If his first time using the power was just him pushing the Daemonites off the cliff, totally okay with that, because that is a blunt force use of his abilities. But no, his first time using it is being able to raise, aim, and fire a whole bunch of guns all at the same time. And that seems very technical for someone who is just finding out they have these powers. So, whatever. It's like I'm going to give it a 5.5, and honest to God, almost all of that is on art. Because it looks great. Scott Clarke does a great job there, except for Singe. Singe looks pretty stupid. But everybody else, totally fine. He draws a good person. It's no problem whatsoever. Just the story, just the idea of, like, this is what makes you special. This power we have never hinted to before. Fantastic. Suicide Squad number 10, written by Adam Glass, art by Fernando Dagnino. Last issue was a crossover thing with Resurrection Man, which kind of plays into play here. We see Waller standing next to Resurrection Man's severed hand, and they're running some sort of tests on it, and it just keeps coming back. So just know that's a thing. Regardless, she's talking to Deadshot, and we see the Suicide Squad rising up through an elevator shaft to do whatever mission they're doing. And Waller's not giving Deadshot any information as to what it is they are actually there for until it becomes absolutely critical. So they reach a door up at the top of the elevator shaft, and who's standing there but Harley Quinn, finally back, ready to join the team. And she runs up and she's like, "Oh, Deadshot, thank you so much, you saved me." And Deadshot's like, "What in the hell? I shot you." And she's like, "Yeah, but you freed the... I'm no longer Harley Quinn, I'm Dr. Harleen Quinzel." So now she's, a doctor again. So Deadshot's not buying it, and Waller's just like, "Screw it. Get on with the mission. Go take care of it." And we see that they are in the Columbia Center skyscraper in Seattle, Washington, where a dude from Basilisk has a whole bunch of employees from this company, Gendrian, held at gunpoint in the conference room. And they're like, "Okay, what does he want? What is he doing?" And they're just like, "We don't know, but you need to take him out because Basilisk is obviously an issue." And they try to look into the employees there to see if they can get an idea of what's going on. And Black Spider's like, "Well, this is very interesting." We don't see why until the next scene where Harley Quinn walks in with a pizza. Says, like, "I got a pizza pie here. Does anybody want it?" And the Basilisk guy takes one of the hostages and it's just like, "If you take another step, I'm shooting him." And then Deadshot proceeds to shoot all the hostages in the head. Like, not just wounding them, killing them. And he's like, "Hey, Basilisk guy, maybe don't pick hostages that have a worse crime sheet than you do." And to give his full name, it's Tyler Reese. So anyway, he shows that he's set up as a suicide bomber. He's ready to take them both out, and he's ready to go. But then the ice guy, I genuinely blanked on his name. Was it just Chill? I don't know. Regardless, he walks up, and he freezes the dude's bomb, so it's unable to go off. And then El Diablo comes in, knocks him out, and then particularly, like, searches him for weapons and any sort of thing that can kill him. So he takes out, like, a cyanide capsule tooth, and he's like, "Oh, all right, he's not using that this time." So then we see them trying to, like, investigate him a little bit, and Black Spider has a lot of information on this, actually. Apparently he is a, like, elite guard who's in charge of guarding the leader of Basilisk named Regulus, and he recounts this whole story of how he came across Regulus one time because he's just a myth, and apparently there was some drug dealers who were also metas, and they hid out in the sewers, and then one day he tracked them down there, and he found they were already dead, and they were killed by this Regulus guy, and the only reason Black Spider managed to escape is because of, like, a freak miracle. So, yeah, he's very scared of this Regulus guy. And so Deadshot calls up Waller, and he's like, "Hey, we have an elite soldier here. He's supposed to be a guard, but he wasn't guarding anybody, which makes me think this is a distraction." And so he's King Shark and Black Spider go off to take care of whatever the distraction, whatever the original thing may have been, whereas Deadshot and them held back. So then we see back with Waller, and Yo-Yo from, like, issue 2 or whatever shows up. because he got free during the Resurrection Man stuff from King Shark's stomach. And he attacks Waller, and I'm skipping ahead slightly here, but basically Waller's just like, yeah, no, I knew you were in there. And yes, I understand you're pissed off, but do you understand what we just proved? You lived in there for like months. You are invulnerable, Yo-Yo, and that is very big deal here. So, yeah, that's the thing. Anyway, we see Black Spider and King Shark making their way to apparently the main computer base room, and they were just trying to get some data off of their servers and take it for Basilisk's sake. And then we see King Shark as soon as they see King Shark, he swallows the flash drive. Like one of the Basilisk guys swallows the flash drive. So King Shark has to get it out of him. And he does. So then they call up Waller and they're like, hey, all right, so here's the deal. The Basilisk guy you wanted alive is not anymore. He's foaming at the mouth. He was clearly poisoned somehow. And El Diablo, he's like, no, I took all the poison off him. Like, that shouldn't have happened. And Waller's like, yeah, no, here's the deal. There's a traitor in Task Force X. One of you poisoned him so that he couldn't talk. And we're going to find out who. And that's where we leave off. I like it. I'm very surprised. Well, okay, here's the thing. They've been setting up the yo-yo thing, like, consistently, so I knew it would be coming back. I'm surprised we got it here of all places. It just seems like a random place to throw it in. But I guess if you have to throw it in, you have to. I'm still not totally... Like, they're setting up Basilisk as, like, this thing, but I still don't feel totally sold on it. Like, they saying, like, oh, Basilisk, they're getting all these secrets or whatever, and their leader is something to be truly feared and marveled at. And I'm like, is he, though? Because I'm just getting, like, he was a myth that nobody thinks exists, except for Black Spider, who just told a very shady story about him. And we know there's a traitor in the group, so I don't know. It just doesn't feel like Basilisk, if it is to be the main threat of this arc, doesn't feel like it yet. Maybe they'll get there, but it just doesn't... It's not quite there for me. Also, the Harleen thing... They leaned into it a little bit, and I skipped over it, where like she was doing psych evals on like the Basilisk guy. Yeah, I don't know. It's still 50-50 for me as to whether or not I think it's working, because like she did that immediately after she did the whole "who ordered a pizza" thing. So I don't know. I don't know the way they're playing this. All in all, it still feels like they're kind of in the setup phase of this arc. They're setting up like the mysteries and like who's doing what. It feels less about Basilisk and more about the traitor, which I'm okay with. I'm totally fine with seeing how that goes. But if so, I hope the Basilisk thing doesn't take too much of a forefront. Either way, skipping ahead to ratings here, I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think it's pretty good. It just has a few little flaws in terms of like, okay, well, we're just kind of... The end of this issue was there's a traitor, which we knew based off of narration, I think, 2 issues ago. So all we've done is reveal it to them. And Yo-Yo's back, so hooray. Legion Lost number 10, written by Tom DeFalco, art by Pete Woods. This is coming off of the end of The Culling, where Legion Lost found a spare time bubble, hopped in, and made their way back to the future. Here we see them going through time, and Gates is pointing out how they have the time bubbles working, but the controls are acting really weird. And whereas they're trying to land in their own time, like as soon as they left, Gates is like, oh, I accidentally overshot it, but don't worry, it's only like a year or two. And they step out of the time bubble, and literally the entire world has completely fallen into just disarray. Like, nobody's there. They're at the Legion headquarters, and it is nothing but, like, overgrown ruins at this point. And they're all just like, dude, what happened? And basically the whole thing is them just... Tyrock is there, and he's immediately just shell-shocked. He's just like, what? Huh? And everyone else is like, all right, well, Wildfire and Dawnstar are going to make their way up into space, seeing if they can... figure out like from above what happened. Gates is going to just teleport around, seeing if it's all around the world, and they do so, and they can't figure out what's happened, and Gates does see it's all around the world. There's literally no trace of anyone, and Tellus is seeing his thoughts, but Tyrock is thinking to himself of like, it's the prophecy. I thought I could escape it, but I couldn't. And Tellus is like, what prophecy? And he's like,
it's complicated, but I don't want to tell everybody and, like, you know, make things more divisive than they already are. And tells us, like, okay, probably not the best idea, whatever. So then we see Timberwolf, who's like, hey, great and glorious leader, come on, focus. To which Tyrock then, like, blasts him with the sound blast, which gets him going at the very least. Also, this entire issue, Chameleon Girl, is just like, yeah, how about we go back to when we came from? That seems like the best option. Let's do that now. Let's go back to exactly where Harvest was. And everyone's just like, Chameleon, could you, like, chill it with the traitorous vibes? Just, like, a little bit, please. Thank you. So we also get a cutaway here to, in an Argus facility, a Major Nicholson, a woman who I think we met in a previous issue, is being briefed on, here's the deal. There's been a big psychic blast in New York. It knocked out 3 city blocks and made them all unconscious. A lot of people died. We think it has something to do with those superpowered teenagers that you met with at an earlier point. And we would like you to be running a team in order to either capture them or kill them. They say canceled, but that means a different thing now. So she's like, all right, well, sure, I'll look into it. And they show them interrogating Timberwolf's, like, friend, Oz, and showing, like, look, he's been in contact with them. He may know where they are. Go ahead and talk to him. And he's all snarky. He's whatever, but he still covers for Timberwolf, and it's like, yeah, no, I haven't seen him. He ran off to New Jersey, and whenever that thing happened, I haven't seen him since. So then we see that the Major is introduced to a new division, basically to battle metahumans, because, like, Justice League exists, and they trust they're in the best interest for the world, but they need a team that's in the best interest of the United States. So they have this team of, like, commando metas, who one of them is his name is just Meta-American. Meta-American. All one word. And then there are 3 others. Wide Load, who's a team medic and spotter. Trip, who does transport and demo. And Gunner, who's a sniper. Who they also point out as a girl. And for some reason, that's a big deal. So, yeah, just know that's there. Anyway, the rest of the story continues. And they're basically just investigating the entirety of the Legion fortress. Wildfire's trying to find a new suit because his was cracked, but when he goes, he finds all of his suits have been destroyed in some way, and so his energy is just slowly dispersing, and he's losing himself. And finally, Tyrock has to make a call once the rest of the team's back together. They also have their old outfits now. They went into the Legion storage locker, I guess, and found it. And Tyrock has to make a call, and he's like, all right, we're going to just use the time bubble to go slowly back in time, 1 decade at a time, until we can meet up with the Legion and figure out what in the heck's happening. And so they go and try to get Dawnstar and Timberwolf, and they find that Timberwolf was looking at basically the Hall of Deceased Legionnaires, to which there were statues of the entire Legion Lost made, which is fair. That was in the main Legion book as well. And it's like our team gave up on trying to find us. So, little heartfelt moment there. Anyway, they hop in the time bubble. Controls are going wonky again. And they end up pretty much exactly where they left, right back at where Harvest Base was, inside of a huge crater where it all exploded. And they're just like, son of a bitch. All right, fine. Wildfire and Dawnstar, you guys can handle the freezing cold. Go do some spotting, see if you can, like, find anything around here. Meanwhile, Gates is going to teleport us back to New York, and we'll get out of the freezing cold here. So they teleport back to New York. They realize they need a place to stay because their place that they were staying was destroyed by Harvest. And so Timberwolf goes and meets up with his friend Oz again, and he takes Chameleon Girl with, because Chameleon Girl's being really traitorous recently. So then we see that this group of meta-Americans is just keeping an eye on Oz, thinking that Timberwolf will eventually meet up, which is correct. They're pulled down an alley, and Timberwolf's like, hey, did you tell anybody anything? And he's like, yeah, no, there's this weird military girl who was asking questions about you. And he's like, military girl? What's going on? And Timberwolf hears the click of the sniper's, like, safety going off. He starts trying to move everyone out of the way. Sniper takes a shot, and looks like 3 shots to the chest, straight on Timberwolf. End of issue. It's fine. It's
In terms of spinning out of the culling, I think that it's decent enough, but I really hate that Chameleon Girl's trying to get us back there so desperately. It sounds like she has an interesting enough story going on, but like, stop going back to the culling, I beg of you. Beyond that, it's okay. It just feels like the thing where they were like, okay, we set up this thing, but we're not going to let them get back to the future. Like, it's just going to be something that, and like when they were in the future, they were just hypothesizing like, maybe Harvest was like supposed to win. Maybe like we messed something up in the past and that led to this. Like, what do we do now? So it's just setting up a bunch of future plots of how they're going to handle the knowledge of there may not be a future to go back to, period, even if they found a way to. So interesting forward setup, but for the issue itself, it's just setup. Like, it's just, it's its own middling thing. Whatever they choose to do with this prophecy, whatever they choose to do with Chameleon Girl, I'm sure Timberwolf's going to live because they seem to treat him like the Wolverine of this group. So overall, I go ahead and give this one I give it like a 6.5. It's fine. It's even good in some places, but for the most part, it's just a unoffending issue. The Ravagers, number 2, written by Howard Mackie and Tom DeFalco, art by Ian Churchill. Last issue left off with the group seemingly leaping to their death off of a cliff to escape capture by the other Ravagers. I'm realizing how confusing the naming of this is going to be. I'm going to say Harvest's group from now on. So these Ravagers are now just on a block of ice in the Arctic Ocean, and Caitlin's just like, I had a plan, and it didn't really go so well, so maybe I need to come up with a better plan. So basically, Caitlin just starts reasoning out, all right, look, this ice is going to break apart any minute now. It's very stormy, very terrible here. I see a ship off in the distance. Ridge, I've studied your file. You're able to, hold your breath forever. So just jump in the water and push us over there. And Ridge is like, you got a plan? And she's like, totally got a plan. And he's like, all right, I'm holding you to it. And she's like, mostly have a plan. So he pushes them over to the boat, and then we cut over to Harvest Group, who are apparently in Mongolia now, and we see Windshear and Bright Eyes, the two that were captured last issue, are being brought before someone called the Keeper, who, I don't know, he keeps them. There's genuinely no explanation. He's just a big, bulky dude who has a smaller dude jetting out of his stomach. So, whatever. Krang. So he's like, all right, so yeah, we're going to go and we're going to, the goal now is we need to capture the other escapees and kill or capture Caitlin Fairchild. So immediately Rose and Warblade are like, okay, I didn't realize she was even still on the board. Like, why do we have to deal with her? He's like, oh, it doesn't matter. We're not sending you guys. We're sending Shadow Walker, who was apparently the first Ravager, the first of Harvest Group, and his most loyal. And he controls some weird goopy substance that is like Shadow. So anyway, he goes up to Harvest, and he's like, what can I do, my lord? And Harvest says, go get Caitlin Fairchild and also bring me the other ones. But don't eat them. You can eat, however, this one woman because she failed me. And so he sucks the life out of this one woman and then makes his way to find out where the rest of them are. Cut to Seattle, Washington. They've all arrived, and they're yelling about how they nearly attacked all the sailors who were on that boat that they jumped onto, to which, Caitlin's like, all right, guys, we need to lay down some ground rules on how we're going to be from now on. And Thunder and Lightning are like, bitch, no, we're out. Bye. And so they leave, go on their own separate way. And at that point, Thunder, 20 minutes later, is like, maybe we shouldn't have left. Maybe we should have stayed. And Lightning's like, dude, we got to go on our own now. We got to survive. We can do this together. And then they realize, wait a minute, the shadows are acting funky. And then Shadow Walker shows up, captures Thunder. And he's like, hey, Lightning, so here's the deal. I know your brother is your weakness. I'm going to keep him here, and I'm going to kill him unless you do exactly what I say, which is get me Caitlin Fairchild. Bring her to me now, okay? And by the way, that little bulb thing on your suit that you've had, which, trust me, they've had, is apparently a tracking device that Shadow Walker has a little piece of himself inside of, so therefore he's always able to find them and call to them. So yeah, go get Caitlin Fairchild. So anyway, nearby, Caitlin and Ridge are talking. They're like, all right, look, it sucks. It sucks that I did those things, but like I was always on the side of good, and you guys see me as this bad guy, and we're just like, dude, I'm also like a teenager, right? I look like a monster, but like I'm also a teenager underneath, and like, how are we supposed to trust you after like those things that, like, how am I supposed to trust you? How are they supposed to trust me? There's a whole bunch of trust issues, and it's like, well, people can change, Ridge. So anyway, then they see a giant bolt of lightning, and they run over and they find lightning, and they're like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, Shadow Walker took my brother. And they're like, oh, Shadow Walker, who's that? And Ridge explains briefly for Caitlin, and then understands that he's like, oh, this bulb on my suit is a tracking device? Rip. And he rips it off, and like, apparently they warned them that if they ever took off that little device, it would kill them. So, playing a big risk there. But it didn't, but it was incredibly painful. So anyway, they go to a abandoned building that is apparently a future home of some Oliver Queen company, and Caitlin and them's like, all right, well, tell me some weakness of Shadow Walker. How do we beat him? And Bridge is like, you don't understand. He doesn't have a weakness. You can't beat him. To which Lightning then shocks them both, knocking them out, being like, you're right. You can only give him what he wants. So then we cut to Shadow Walker talking to Thunder, and it's just like, I really want to eat you, man. I was told I couldn't, but I really want to eat you. And then Lightning shows up, and he's like, all right, well, I guess I don't have to eat you now. But then when Lightning shows up, she's just dragging Caitlin. And it's just like, could you go get Ridge? He's out there too. He's too heavy for me. And Shadow Walker's like, here's the thing. I also need to track Beast Boy, because Harvest, in an earlier page, I forgot to mention, said, please go get Beast Boy because he wasn't supposed to escape yet. And then Shadow Walker's like, I can't track him. I don't know why I can't track him. Why can't I track him? And she's like, I don't know. I saw him leave when we first escaped. I didn't follow him after that. And she's like, are you sure? And he starts using his little shadow tendrils to like really get in there. To which Thunder then starts getting pissed off, and he uses an energy blast to escape out of Shadow's tendrils. And then like, Lightning, we can beat him together through the power of, I guess, siblings or whatever we are. So they team up together and they start like trying to do a little blast thing. But something's still holding them back, and they realize that it's those trackers, like part of Shadow Walker is inside of them. So therefore they can't beat him. So then Ridge rips off Thunder and Lightning's trackers, which of course intense pain, but now they're able to overcome, and they literally are like, they transform their fury into vengeance, and they can overcome anything. And Shadow Walker's like, no, and Lightning blows him up and beats him. And now they're just left there, four of them as a team. Now, I guess, kind of trusting each other more. Then all of a sudden we get a cut to a dream of a dude bathing in blood with the Ravagers all there dead-eyed next to him, shouting blood, blood, blood. Then Beast Boy wakes up and is just like, he's coming, Tara. Brother Blood is coming, and he's going to kill them all. And that's our going into next issue. Okay. It wasn't awful. Like, I know I'm hard on this series because of this event that it spun out of, but it wasn't awful. It was okay. Like, this was like as much of by the numbers as whatever. Like, okay, you have a group, a shadowy organization that's hunting down these people, and they have all these crazy members, and the other people have to form a team in order to overcome. Okay, fine, I get it. I understand the basic premise here. As such, you're not doing anything special. I want you to, like, blow me away with something here, but, like, all I'm getting is Caitlin every other page going, how do I reach these kids? So, art is okay, too. It's fine. It's not great. It's not blowing me away. It's fine. I give it, like, a 5.5. And I know that seems harsh for me saying that it's fine, but, like, you have to understand 5 is, like, average of, like, it's not good or bad. It's just there. So this is ever so slightly above that. But, like, I haven't been given a reason to care yet. You had an entire event to set up why I should care, and I still don't have a reason to care. Demon Knights number 10, written by Paul Cornell, art by Diogenes Neves. This issue picks up right after the last issue where they're attacked by a sea serpent while sailing the sea to get to Merlin in, was it Avalon, I think? I don't know. Regardless, turns out this sea serpent was actually a pirate sea serpent, meaning some pirates are riding it and using it as their ship. And they call over and they're like, hey, surrender all your stuff or we'll kill you. And then Horsewoman shoots a arrow at the main pirate guy, and he's like, all right then, Sea Serpent, attack. And then Algibere's about to try to fight it with some string or something, but then Xanadu is like, okay, get me all the rope that we have. And she magically enchants the rope so that it ties itself around the mouth of the Sea Serpent. And then she directs it over towards Vandal Savage, who just uppercuts it, just straight Shoryuken right to the face. And just knocks all the pirates off of it. And he's just like, ha ha ha, Vandal Savage is the greatest again. And everyone's like, okay, maybe there is a reason to have Vandal around. He's pretty good about that. And so they pull up some pirates out of the water and say, here's the deal. We will take you onto our boat and let you live if you use your Sea Serpent to keep away all other things that are coming after us until we get to our destination. To which they do, which is nice enough. But then when they arrive at the port, all of them are, tied up and they're being brought out as prisoners because, pirates or whatever. And Jason Blood is there and he presents them to the local sheriff or whatever, and he's like, here's some criminals or whatever. We come bearing the seal of Albacerum. And they're like, oh, well then please come on in. And they show up, and apparently this is modern day Cornwall, or at least, what is now Cornwall. And they're just saying oh, in my day it was called this, and in my day it was called that, but now it's Cornwall. And they are talking about there's some weird stuff going out on the seas. Maybe we should stick to the shores. And then this local shows up and he's like, hey, give me a pint and I'll tell you all about the story of what's going on. I'm not going to continue that accent, but he basically tells him that out in the sea has been growing and growing with more and more monsters, which, is not good. And every once in a while someone try to take advantage, like those pirates, and use it when it gets beached in order to use it for their own thing. But then also on the land, giant beasts and giant creatures are also constantly attacking them and are taking all this land up because everyone's just forcing to flee from their homes. So yeah, a lot of bad stuff pretty much all over the place. And they're trying to figure out what's going on, and Jason's like, well, if we're going to fight some monsters, we're going to need one. So he summons Etrigan, and they make their way out onto this wide open field, and they are almost immediately jumped by a giant wolf who starts attacking them, and everyone Xanadu, she tries to make a spell, doesn't work out. Etrigan brought into the jaws of the beast, and he's like, I mean, it's hurting me, but it's not, awful. No, Savage and Exoristos aren't able to break through the hide. Algibere's not able to do anything. Horsewoman can't find any weak point at all. And then Shining Knight, Sir Easton, just jumps down off of his Pegasus and stabs the wolf in the head and just kills it. No problem. And Exoristos is like, Sir Easton, that was, and he's like, incredible. And she's like, arousing. And he's like, oh, all right. Wasn't expecting that one. So it starts melting and transforming back into its original form, which was just a normal wolf. So that was something. Meanwhile, a day passed. They're all riding a bit deeper in. Now they're in some swamplands, which used to be the lakes that the Lady of the Lake would take King Arthur across at the end of at the beginning of the book. And they're just kind of talking about okay, so these creatures, it seems like they're just getting to their essence, their nature. The wolves are becoming more savage, whereas the deer nearby are becoming just flashes of energy. They're more skittish. They're just their primeval essential nature. And so maybe that's the issue. But anyway, they cross over a hill and they finally see a giant tower standing where Camelot was. And they're like, well, that's changed a lot. But before they can attack, they hear this roaring, groaning noise. And Xanadu's like, wait a minute, I recognize that voice. And it is zombified King Arthur who's shown up here. And Etrigan's like, holy shit, dude, it's King Arthur. What's going on, man? And King Arthur's trying to attack the group. And he's like, hey, cut it out. And then he starts melting away the same way that the wolf did. But in his place, the smoke expands and it starts enveloping the whole group. And everyone except for Xanadu, it seems, are being transformed into these much larger beast versions that are the essential versions of themselves. So That's what they're going to have to fight off next issue. So, yeah, it's a little bit confusing. It's not the most straightforward issue. It definitely feels like it took a left turn somewhere. Like, because of all the dinosaurs and crap like that in the first arc, you told me sea serpents were out in the ocean. I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense. That tracks 100%, which is why I didn't even, like, it didn't bother me last issue. But now they're saying that that's weird. Now they're saying it's weird that there are so many sea serpents and also, like, land beasts. And that it's actually magic. And I'm like, so were the dinosaurs magic? I don't understand what is and is not magic here. So, a little bit confusing on just their world building, but I do like the story they're telling. Vandal Savage, always a treat. Never going to turn that down. They also did some pretty good stuff with Horsewoman here, because I guess her curse is that she can't, like, touch the ground or, like, stand or anything like that, so she always has to be riding a horse. But when they're on the ship, clearly you can't ride a horse, so they, like, just had Exoristos holding her the whole time. It was fun little sight gags. But no, it's a fine book. I give it a 7. Art's also very good. It's just, I don't know. I feel like they set up a lot in terms of world building over the past like 10 issues. They've done a really good job with that. And then this one, it just kind of feels like, oh, but wait, that's not normal? Okay, then what is normal? Because in a world where magic is just a thing and there's dinosaurs running about, seems pretty normal. Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E, number 10, written by Matt Kindt, art by Alberto Ponticelli. Last issue was sort of kind of a Animal Man tie-in, but like not really. This doesn't even match up to that, so whatever. Frankenstein is in a library, and he's just reading through some old poetry books or something like that, his personal collection. And then the librarian comes over and starts laying down the moves, and she's like taking off her glasses and rubbing all up on him. And I will say throughout this issue, it has just panel cutaways to like a POV shot of something happening, whether that be like rubbing someone's face with a hand, like strangling someone, doing horrible things, doing great things, regardless, just random cutaways. And it's in a slightly different art style, so you know it's something else. But regardless, it seems to be Frankenstein's memories. Anyway, this particular issue, she's laying down the moves, and she's like, oh, Frankenstein, I can tell there's something going on. Something about traitors in our midst and Satan's ring. And then Frankenstein is like, hold that thought, giant bugs are attacking. And then giant bugs start attacking and start killing Frankenstein, or at least trying to. And so he asked S.H.A.D.E who these guys are, and apparently they are bug assassins from a group called Scare-E-B. Scare-E-B. Yes, I know. Anyway, they are currently, they usually work with S.H.A.D.E and are hired out because of their ability to, like, be difficult to kill, but they're handled, like, for assassinations and stuff like that. And so now they're coming after Frankenstein. It's like, oh, well, who hired them to kill Frankenstein? So anyway, Frankenstein makes quick work of them. No real problem there. But then they have a sit down with the Father Time, and basically it's just like, all right, so we have one of our agents named Crowley is in some weird extra dimensional city that popped up 5 years ago. We need you guys to go and just check in, make sure everything's all right, because we can't get a hurt on her. And also, she may be the one who called this in. So we have a mole and a traitor. And yes, everything you just heard about where that weird flirty lady was true. So head on over. So anyway, they make a transfer through an extra dimensional thing, and apparently they have to transport via jetpack, because if they just transfer between dimensions without being in this weird cloud thing, which they transfer via jetpack, they will straight up be tore apart atom by atom. So they make it to this alternate dimension, which is basically just a upside down metropolis, but like people have lived here long enough that there are like pathways connecting to the different like skyscrapers, but like because the ground is on top, it's just floating on nothing but the skyscrapers. Regardless, they put their jetpacks away, and then they start looking around. Nina is running comms. Velcoro is looking over Nina. I will say 100% credit to Matt Kindt here writing. They use the names of these like smaller creature commandos constantly, so they are now burned into my head. So Velcoro is watching Nina. Meanwhile, Griffith, the werewolf one, is teaming up with Frankenstein to go find... see, now I forget the main one. Crowley. And very quickly they find her. And like they're trying to blend in. They keep on saying, oh, don't bring attention to yourself. But everyone in the city is just a normal human. And then you have a Wolfman Frankenstein and this weird blue-looking lady. So I feel like they don't blend in enough anyway. So then we see that there is a bug that is like one of the scary bees tracking after Frankenstein. So Velcora goes off to try to fight after them. Frankenstein and Griffith still following Crowley. Griffith gets jumped by the bug. Frankenstein manages to stay ahead of it. So also a thing that the bugs can do is they use little nanite bacteria things that basically eat the flesh of their targets. So it didn't affect Frankenstein because he's already dead, but Griffith would be very highly effective. So he has to dodge out and make sure that he doesn't get hit by any of their things. And while he does manage to take out one or two of them, he does eventually have to flee, and he ends up crashing into a random person's bedroom. So then we see Frankenstein just quoting poetry this whole time, by the way. Goes up and tries to, he yells after Crowley like, Crowley, come back, what's going on? And grabs Crowley by the neck, and we just see more and more of these flashes of memories. And apparently Crowley was like, I got an official telepagraph message. Telepagraph? It's telepathy, but a message. So apparently it was from the Leviathan field office that said that Frankenstein was going to be the one that betrayed S.H.A.D.E. So yes, they sent the assassins after Frankenstein, but it was because they got an official message from someone in a field office in S.H.A.D.E. So she's always been loyal. She's always been willing to do it. So at that point, she's like, I will show you. I'll just come with me. And then she like turns the valve on a steam thing, which knocks Frankenstein off of the ramp that he's on. And because there is no ground, it's just sea down beneath. But if you cross through the sea, you then end up on the other side and you'll be torn apart atom by atom. But Frankenstein literally goes through the bottom of the ocean, and he lands as soon as he's about to crash in the ocean as the issue cuts out. And we see that all these memories that he's been having are very likely, this is the way I read it at least, memories from his body parts. Like the parts that were used to make Frankenstein, these are memories of things that they did. So, yeah. Also, quick little reveal here is that Velcora caught up with Crowley and is maybe doing something. I don't know. They just say, this is finally getting fun. And then Crowley says, no. Whatever that means. There's a lot to take in on this, and the fact that it is part of a larger story just makes it all the more confusing. It's very hard to explain the sort of visual things that are going on with this book. It's not the most difficult read, but it is something that is, I don't know, because I think this is actually the first issue, maybe last issue was. No, this issue was. This is the first issue that isn't Jeff Lemire's, and I feel like they're trying to set something up. I feel like they're trying to do something different, but it is definitely a different writing style, and it's just taking a little bit of time getting used to. Not bad, not awful, but taking time to get used to. So I will go ahead and give it I'll give it a 7. And that's mainly because I like some of the ideas they're throwing out. I like the idea of the body parts having memories, and I like this traitor thing going on. But it's still very much, the 7 is mostly the art, which has stayed consistent the whole time. I think it's still the same artist. So very good on that. Writing-wise, we'll see how it plays out. But for right now, it's a 7. Resurrection Man number 10, written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, art by Jesus Saiz. Last issue was a weird little crossover thing with Suicide Squad, so this issue pretty much doesn't tie into that at all, except that he is still with the girl that he met up with over the course of that, Kim Rebecca. So she can touch things and is able to see like a brief little flash of what interacted with that thing. Anyway, so Mitch now has shadow control powers. He's able to just control shadows in vague, undefined terms. But he uses it to break into this building, this factory in Pittsburgh, where Kim, when she touched Mitch, had a vision of this building. So they both make their way in there. And as they arrive, they're like, okay, this is definitely the place I saw, but like I don't know how it connects to the past that is Mitch Shelley. But as they're walking through this factory, they trip a laser wire, which immediately sets off this very lethal weapon system that just immediately tries to shoot and kill them. Basic fight scene, they make their way through. Mitch uses his shadow powers, whereas Kim manages to hold her own with a handgun the whole time. She touches one of the robots that is being called out, and she's like, oh, the central control panel is right up there, because she uses her powers to see that. And they almost get doused with, like, lava. And they make the point that this tech looks very similar to the tech used in the transhuman thing, which is Daryl, like his friend from, like, 3 issues ago. So it has something to do with that. It seems very similar. But anyway, he blocks the lava, he breaks up, and he takes out all the rest of the weapons. And they're like, okay, so maybe this has something to do with Daryl. Maybe that's how, like, Daryl kind of knows me or something like that. I don't know. But they flip this switch and this big thing opens up that shows a ladder descending deeper into the ground. And they make their way down and they find basically a secret lab. And a whole bunch of transhuman-looking stuff is in there. And they're like, okay, but, well, go ahead and touch it, see if we can get anything. And he touches it and he sees Daryl working on one of the pieces. And so she makes her way over to a computer nearby, and she's like, turns out Daryl actually fitted himself with a tracking device. And since Daryl was taken by the body doubles all those issues ago, we can use that tracking in order to find out where they are, since they seem to have answers as well. So they pull up the tracking thing and they're just getting it downloaded. But before the download can commence, they're interrupted by Suriel and a group of other angels who all are there to kill. And Kim is immediately like, are those like actual literal angels? Should we be fighting them? And he's like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. You focus on the download. Stay safe. So she's working on download. He's trying to fight with the shadow powers. They fire off they got swords and axes and literal guns. And they're trying everything just to take in Mitch. But like Suriel's like, no, don't kill him. If we kill him, this is how everything happened in the first place. It's how I lost him. Like, just bring him in, for God's sakes. And the fight's going pretty well. Kim manages to jump into a power loader and beat up a couple angels. And she's like, am I going to hell? Did I kill an angel? Am I going to hell? And she's like, and then Mitch jumps in and is like, good job, you banished that angel. And she's like, oh, banish, that's a much better term. I like that more than kill. So fight's going on, and eventually they seem to have Mitch surrounded. But before they can make any sort of killing blow, Demon shows up from hell with this whole little army behind him. And he's like, were you trying to make a play on Mitch without both sides being here? And so he shows up, and they basically just start arguing about, like, who deserves to have Mitch's thing. Like, they're going to fight over it. But then Mitch is like, hold up. Here's the deal. You know I can still, like, fight, and I will fight both of you if I have to. But give me 1 week. You give me 1 week to find the answers about my past, and I will willingly go with whoever is the first person to claim my soul after that week. And the hell person's like, you want to cause more chaos here on Earth for a whole week? I'm totally down. And the Suriel's like, no, you're not in a position to negotiate here. And she's like, and basically he's just like, look, you know something about my past, but you cannot tell me. Just let me have this, and I'll be willing to go with you. And she's like, fine, whatever, 1 week. And they both split up. And then Kim's like, what did you just do? Did you just make a deal with demons and angels? And he's like, yeah, look, I bought us some time. We gotta go take care of this. So they steal this huge, like, armored assault vehicle, and they start using the tracker information to find their way to where the body doubles are. And that's it. That's just where it lets off, is they're on their way. So it's good. It's still solid. Resurrection Man's still going great. I'm not sure if I really, like, the Suicide Squad thing was so not a thing here. It's playing out more in Suicide Squad, but it's not a thing here. And it's kind of disappointing that not more came from that, of like, yes, we know that the Body Doubles group was kind of battling with the Suicide Squad group of Task Force X and Amanda Waller, but it's still very opaque as to what that was. We're getting more of the heaven and hell stuff, though, which I am always more for. And I do feel like we are getting to the end here, where we are, because he's put a time limit on it. He's like, this story will be done in a week. I'm sure he'll somehow get out of it, but this particular story, with him getting the answers, will be done in a week. So, interested to see how it turns out. Overall, I'm going to give this issue a I give it a 7. Just a flat 7. The only thing keeping me from 7.5 is that I don't know, it was, strangely enough, I would normally not critique this. It feels a bit too heavy on the fight scenes in that this is one of those books, like, I really do like just the story and the characters and the fact that, like, oh, he has to fight the angels, and oh, he has to fight the robots, and oh, he has to do this thing, like, whatever. I genuinely want to know where he came from. I like the stories where we were just going about that and learning that stuff. So a little bit iffy on that there are 2 separate, pretty decently long fight scenes. We don't get a lot of answers in this issue, but 7's still respectable, so looking forward to seeing how the rest of this plays out. The Shade number 9, written by James Robinson, art by Fraser Irving. Last issue was pretty much entirely wholesale separately from this. So picking up in this issue, we go with the Shade walking down the street, and he's just basically trying to figure out the theme of his travel. Like, the whole vampires in Barcelona thing would be blood, and he figures that this whole thing probably should be family, because he's looking into the Caldecots and whatnot. But more so than anything else, it's probably going to be past, like the past. Then we cut to Memphis, Egypt, 2681 BC, where some Egyptian gods are just standing over the pyramids, just blowing people up. And then one says, I'm getting bored. We'll get back to that in some way. So then we cut to, I assume, modern day, and I also assume England, but genuinely hard to say. And we see 2 guys talking. One of them is a Caldecott that we've seen before, and it's Dudley Caldecott. And the other one is this mysterious character named Miles. And maybe he's shown up, but I've completely forgotten him. So anyway, they just talk about how they are basically like funding all of this conflict and like war and destruction around the world, and how like, oh, I've been causing famines here, and I'm going to bomb this place later, and we're funding this rebel army over here. And as they're doing so, they're just stripping in front of each other, straight down to their birthday suits, until finally they proceed to walk into this room that's bathed in pink light. And they're still just talking about, all this bad stuff. And they're like, I don't know, I don't feel exactly bloodthirsty, but I can't remember the word. And then one dude steps up and he's holding this knife on a pillow, and he's like, excuse the pun, Sir Caldecots, but I believe you mean cutthroat. And he's like, cutthroat, that's the word I was looking for. And then he walks up to this altar, slits the throat of the guy on the altar, and then just walks out and says, like, I've got a meeting with the Prime Minister. So that happened. Then we get S.H.A.D.E, who is torturing, as far as I can tell, this, doubt he has a name. I'm not sure if it actually even says it. But anyway, it's this dude in like a weird... Scarlet Terror. There it is. He's a dude in like a weird, like, stereotypical devil costume, and I guess he's a villain. And he's like, S.H.A.D.E, aren't you a hero now? You shouldn't be killing me. And it's like, why? Like, I still enjoy killing just because hero. Like, who cares? And this Irish hero steps up named Silverfin, who I feel like was established in... maybe Starman, definitely not here. But he steps up, and basically Scarlet Terror's like, Silverfin, you're a real hero? You're not going to let him kill me, are you? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm totally going to let him kill you. Like, you totally deserve to die. And so S.H.A.D.E and Silverfin both just agree to kill this dude named Scarlet Terror in horrifying ways. And Silverfin apparently has some weird magic, like Irish magic on his side. Doesn't really explain it that well. But apparently they're old friends, and they get to talking. And Silverfin is doing a... He's like doing a favor for S.H.A.D.E, I guess is the best way you could say it. It's still a little unclear as to exactly what the favor was, outside of maybe going after Scarlet Terror. I don't know, but it's apparently something about 5 people that he had to go and kill. I feel like I missed this story somewhere, but regardless, S.H.A.D.E's like, oh, I don't suppose your magic lets you see the future, can you? And he's like, I mean, I know of magic that lets me, but I don't particularly have it on me. He's like, it's whatever, I may as well just see this on my own. So then we get this whole long sequence of Dudley Caldecott making his way. He hops in a limo, he drives the whole way. He gets to a elevator that is in a bookstore, so obviously it's some secret place that no one's supposed to know that he's going to. He descends in the elevator, he steps out, and we see there's a whole bunch of people all working there. And as soon as Dudley takes a step forward, S.H.A.D.E is just there waiting, and he's killed all the other people in the room. He's like, hello, my boy, my descendants. It's time we had a chat. And Dudley immediately freaks out and starts running away. S.H.A.D E just keeps popping up in his place. And Dudley's like, stay away from me, stay away, you monster. He's like, look, the whole reason I haven't killed you right now is because we're family, and I've come to realize that's actually kind of important. So I'm willing to let you explain to me what's going on here. And he pulls like a horn on a statue, and some hired goons showed up with guns. They all come out of the room, and S.H.A.D E just lops off all their head. And he's like, Dudley, look, this is getting a little bit stereotypical now. Next thing you're going to tell me you've hired some sort of assassin that's going to take me out. And then ninjas descend from the ceiling. He's like, oh, ninjas. Okay, well, still pretty stereotypical there, Dudley. So he takes out all the ninjas, and he goes up to Dudley. He's like, Dudley, last chance. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And then Miles steps out, and he's like, hi, my name is Miles St. Aubrey, and Dudley and I are a member of the same circle. And S.H.A.D.E's like, what's going on here? And he's like, here's the deal. We are totally all into ancient Egyptian god lore, and therefore we've set up this base directly underneath the British Museum. I bet you didn't know that. So S.H.A.D.E's like, are you serious? You guys are trying, like, you're trying to get into, like, worshipping some old dead gods? And Miles is like, no, that's not at all what we're doing at all. You make it sound so ordinary. Like, we're not part of the Masonic temple or whatever. We're not Masons of the Egyptians that way. No, we've got our own thing. And we have found that these gods aren't dead, and we're not worshiping them. We are controlling them. And you see the god that was blowing everything up at the beginning of the issue is now in this room. And Dudley is screaming out how his powers are gone. And it looks like he's going to... Or no, sorry, that's S.H.A.D.E. My bad. S.H.A.D.E is screaming out how his powers are gone. And he's just weak against this giant Egyptian god that's got him in his hand. So, yeah. Big developments. It's a little bit confusing. I do kind of wish, now that I know we're getting to this point, that we had just a little bit more setup on like Dudley and Miles and stuff like that, because I genuinely can't remember if any of them have been mentioned beforehand. That's on me for spreading this out to the normal release schedule and not going back and rereading, but still, I'm a little bit confused as to how much we actually knew about this. If it's just coming up this issue, then it's just a confusing issue, which has its own issues. But I liked it. I think it's setting up a good amount of stuff. The whole Irish hero thing, I feel like was just a pull for maybe fans of the original series. I don't know who that was for, but it came out of nowhere. But no, it's okay. It's fine. It's not blowing my hair back. It's setting up a big threat, I feel like, for these last 3 issues of S.H.A.D.E genuinely doesn't have any... Because S.H.A.D.E just been overpowered this entire series. Like, he's able to do anything. He can't lose. So now he's actually facing something where he's having a problem. So, yeah, I'm interested at the very least. I'll go ahead and give it I'm giving it a 6.5, and that may seem low, but it's mainly just because of confusion. Art-wise, fantastic, looks great. I am sold by the promise of the next issue, but this particular one just has just enough problems to bring it down less than 7. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 13th, 2012. And, I don't rank books on this show, partially because I'm already so low on time, but mostly because I just don't want to. But I really feel like it would be hard to rank the comics for this week. I genuinely do. Because I'm genuinely torn between Grifter and Deathstroke on which takes the bottom spot. I know that's mean. It's Deathstroke. There's no contest. But at the same point, I'm not a fan of Rob Liefeld's work. Just saying. So anyway, let's talk about next week. Next week, June 20th, 2012, there are only 12 comics coming out, and those are the number 10 issues of Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Catwoman, Nightwing, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern Corps, Captain Atom, DC Universe Presents, Wonder Woman, Blue Beetle, and Legion of Superheroes. It's insane to me that week lost a Bat book. Like, it has one fewer Bat book than it started with, and it still has the most Batman books. Like, bar none. That's insane. Anyway, let me talk about where you can find me. I am on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. All one word. Also, there is a Patreon, Mild Fuzz TV, all one word. I would say you could find me there, but I am an unpaid intern, so your money goes into the pockets of big business. I'm so very sorry. But that'll do it for me. Thank you very much for listening/watching. Tune in next week for more bombastic comic reviews. And as always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.